Hello, how are you today? Welcome to my channel. I'll be on Ageless Lifestyle. So, one way to live a happy and stress free life is to share your imagination and creativity by writing a story. So, writing stories enhances your cognitive abilities, such as your vocabulary, comprehension, and critical thinking skills. So, the story that I'm going to share with you today is a real story that happened in the past. The setting and the time and the characters were real, only I faked the names of the characters. So, I want you to interact in the story and tell me who is Ellie. And you can also write that uh, in the comment section below. And you can also share your insights about culture and gossiping, the impact of this to other people's lives. So I hope you enjoy listening to the story. Patricia, your name is written in the stars. Okay, have fun. See you. Long time ago, there was this fair lady named Patricia. Patricia was a smart, talented young lady. She could play the piano and could sing very well. Whenever there were special occasions or festivities in town, attended by the mayor and other town officials, Patricia was one of those invited special guests to perform on stage. Her favorite songs were Fly Me to the Moon, What a Wonderful World, and the ever famous Moon River, sung by Audrey Hepburn. Patricia's parents were landowners. During those times, families who owned lands and farms were considered well off. Her parents also had a small restaurant in town. Because she was a smart girl, her parents sent her to a faraway city in Cebu to study at the Colegio de San Carlos, now University of San Carlos. Patricia graduated a bachelor's degree in teaching, major in science. She was a science teacher and she could speak English fluently. People who knew Patricia said that she was a bit spoiled. Her parents pampered her too much, that she hadn't learned any household chores, not even cooking rice. She was a city girl, a socialite in the 1950s. She was picky about almost everything, including food. Patricia was seldom seen associating with people in the neighborhood. She loved music, art, fashion, and jewelry. She was up to date of the latest fashion trends and was meticulous in color harmony when it comes to clothing. She made sure her clothes matched her jewelry, shoes, bags, and even umbrellas. When she smiled, at least three front teeth embellished with gold and gemstones were obviously noticeable. As a family tradition, Patricia would go back to her hometown in Bohol every summer break. She would take the long trip back home, 8 hours by boat, 3 hours by bus, and an hour walk just to be reunited with her family. At the time, transportation was difficult. There were only one or two small ships available, and were usually overloaded and slow. One summertime, Patricia, who was already a teacher, came back home for summer vacation. It was late afternoon, and she was standing by the window when her eyes caught a glimpse of a young boy, about 16 years old, playing rubber bands in the neighborhood. Out of boredom and curiosity, Patricia came down from the second floor of their house and asked the boy if he could teach her how to play rubber bands. The boy, with all his innocence, showed Patricia how to play the game of rubber bands. And days after that, they became friends. Carlos was the youngest in the family. His parents owned lands, rice fields, and coconut trees. He was a handsome young boy, and at the age of 16, he knew nothing about farm work but play. During those times, for most families, going to school was not that very important. And Carlos, who was 16 at the time, had not yet completed elementary school. In the olden times, Filipinos were known to be very conservative, especially when it comes to having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Society would frown on behaviors, especially for women who tried to initiate conversations or friendships with men. Flirting was a big taboo. Physical contact, even holding hands in public, was a big no-no. Courtship often involved formal rituals and the involvement of the families. A man seeking a woman's affection would approach her family first, particularly her parents or guardians, to formally express his intentions and seek their permission and blessing. This Filipino culture was so strong that anyone who was seen crossing the line was condemned by society as if this person committed a grave offense, like a criminal. One lazy afternoon, Carlos and Patricia were sitting on a staircase in Patricia's house. Carlos was seated 2 steps lower next to Patricia. The two were having a casual conversation and perhaps waiting for the sun to set, when suddenly a neighbor was running towards them and calling Patricia, informing her that her father was on his way home from the farm. Patricia, a city woman, was puzzled, and this neighbor gossiper, who acted crazy and was panting for breath, made Patricia and Carlos panicked, and so they ran without knowing where they were heading to. It looked like this. There was only one single track path going to and from Patricia's house. In the olden times, there were no back roads in the countryside, but only trails or footpaths. People used to walk on the trail in single file. Carlos was running fast on the path, and Patricia, who was confused, was running after him. The neighbors saw them running that way. It looked like Patricia was running after Carlos. For the neighbors, this scene was sexually malicious, disgusting, and unacceptable. The gossip spread like wildfire. People judged Patricia as immoral, a woman chasing a boy. Upon hearing this gossip, Patricia's parents became furious. Her mother, who was a very religious woman, was screaming and wailing and cursing Patricia for staining their family's reputation. To save face, she demanded that the boy should marry Patricia, and Patricia's father threatened Carlos with a long knife. It was like a shotgun marriage. Carlos was 16 and Patricia was 25. Aside from Carlos was very young and uneducated, Patricia was a teacher who graduated from a prestigious university. For the family, it was a big shame, and Patricia's parents could not accept it and disowned her. It was a wedding that became the talk of the town. For the people, it was the weirdest and the funniest wedding of all times. The parents from both sides did not attend. For decades, the gossip never stopped. Married life was financially okay. Patricia was teaching in high school. During those times, a teacher's salary would suffice the basic needs of a big family. There were no bills to pay. They could just get vegetables, fruits, crops from the farm. However, it was very stressful for Patricia because, aside from the people who continuously ridiculed them, her parents and siblings did not speak to her anymore and hated her husband to the bones. One day, Patricia suggested to Carlos that they should move out elsewhere far away. The family with 4 small children moved to far south of the country that would take them for about 2 days on the ships and long hours on different bus routes. There in the far south, Patricia continued teaching in high school. Carlos was left in the house taking care of the children with the help of a housemaid. Carlos was a handsome young man, and many women admired him. Some women, single or married, made friends with him, some pretending to sell vegetables, chickens, and other crops around the neighborhood just to catch a glimpse of Carlos or to have a conversation with him. People gossiped that they saw Carlos and some women in a lively conversation and suspected that Carlos had an affair with any one or two of these women. This gossip spread so fast, like the speed of lightning, and this had reached the ears of Patricia. Patricia became jealous and insecure. Since then, the couple were always fighting. There was no one to talk to about her problems. Patricia's family abandoned her. She had no real friends, and she became depressed, and after a couple of years, this resulted to mental illness. The school principal reported that Patricia, instead of going to school, she went somewhere, like inside the church, and kneeled there for a long time. This happened many times, and she was seen talking to herself, and so the school district fired her. Patricia became jobless. Carlos did not know any job, and so the family for the first time experienced extreme financial hardships. There was no other way but to go back to their hometown in Bohol. The worst time happened because both parents of Patricia and Carlos were not willing to support them financially. They got 9 children, most of them very small at the time. No more house help, and Patricia, in spite of her mental condition, was expected to take care of the children and do household chores. Carlos needed to learn how to earn a living, and so he practiced working in the rice field. For the first time in his life, Carlos waded through the mud and plowed the rice field. This kind of situation was totally new to him. He was always tired and angry and would yell at Patricia for burning the rice again and again or for not cooking a decent meal. People could hear Patricia screaming. Life was extremely difficult. There were days that there was no food on the table. One day, Patricia's mother came to the house. She was looking around, criticizing and complaining about everything that she saw there. The house so dirty, the children smelled so bad, etc. And suddenly she said, I will take the little girl to stay with me in the house, since you cannot even afford to buy her slippers. And so she grabbed that one little girl with the blonde hair, about 5 years old at the time, and bribed her with nice hair clips and ribbons. Her name was Ellie. Ellie was screaming, her left hand reaching out for her father's hand. Papa, Papa, please hold my hand. While her grandmother pulled Ellie with her right hand. It was a tug of war. Carlos had no choice but let go of her little girl, thinking that Ellie would have a better life in her grandparents' house. While her grandmother was dragging Ellie on the trail, her father could hear her crying and calling him. That was the day this little girl was disconnected from the rest of her siblings and was raised in a different home. At the start, her father would check on her from time to time and told her to report to him if ever anyone would hurt her in her grandparents' house, because he knew how Patricia's parents hated him so much, and they might make or take their hatred on the child. Because he was too busy and tired working in the rice fields, soon he seldom checked on his little girl, and Ellie developed the feeling of loneliness and isolation. Over the years, Patricia's condition was getting worse and worse. People said a bad spirit lived inside her body, and so Patricia was brought to quack doctors many times, but to no avail. Some creepy looking old women would come to the house and, while looking up the sky, chanted something incomprehensible and smothered Patricia with a bad smelling oil. Still, Patricia was the same. Sadly, her siblings did not help her either financially or give her moral support. In short, they were not concerned about their sister's mental health condition. People reported that Patricia was seen crossing the rice field, the river, and talking to herself. The beautiful, smart, and talented Patricia did not understand that her beloved children suffered from poverty and could barely go to high school. There was no cure for Patricia's mental illness. The children suffered a lot. In school and in the community, the humiliation never stopped. Patricia's son, Eduardo, was always into fist fighting in school. One time, he knocked off the teeth of one of his classmates and left him on the floor bleeding. When he was asked why he did it, he angrily said, "If this boy would mention the name of my mother again, I would knock off all of his teeth." Then another time, Eduardo slapped hard the face of a girl who made fun of his mother. The girl's face turned red and swelled. Patricia had lived up to her late 60s. It was a miracle how she survived amidst those difficulties and hardships in life. Patricia, your name is written in the stars. At the time of your death, I'm sure the heavens sent the angels to sing to you your favorite songs and led you to paradise, the everlasting life. Though I did not fully understand, deep in my heart, I love you, Patricia. Love, Ellie. So I hope Listening to my story was worth your time. I do hope that you learned some lessons about life. And if you're interested to follow what happened to Ellie and how did she know about what happened to her mother, Patricia, please subscribe so you can follow the sequel of the story with the title The Little Girl Ellie. See you. Thank you.